Hey, this is Irvin Griffin, and welcome to another edition of Grown Man Talk. This time around, this one isn't so much about LeVar Ball, but I've noticed a few videos talking about, WWE's full of racism and everything anyway, which I can't disagree with, but at the same time, I take a little exception to because number one, I've been a fan. I was a fan started in December of 1985. So this this past December will have been 31 years that I have been watching the business of professional wrestling. And while WWE does have a shady history, in the next several minutes or so, I'm going to go through, just based on my own views and own memory, the WWE is not the only guilty party. I think they get crapped on because they're the biggest and most visible of the organizations. But the truth be told, there has always been a history of racism and prejudice in professional wrestling. Take the 1960s and 70s when Harley Race, the longtime NWA World Heavyweight Champion, who went on to hold it a record of 7 times, if my memory serves me correct. He actually, during one of his reigns, wanted to drop the NWA World Championship to Tony Atlas. Not because so much that Atlas was deserving or was he such a great athlete, but because it would generate money, particularly in the South where Atlas was very popular. The promoters of the time did not want to do it and refused his request on the grounds of a black man cannot be marketed as a world champion. Yes, that was the mindset at the time in most promotions. And this was the NWA conglomerate at the time. Of course, the NWA, for those of you who are longtime wrestling fans, know the NWA was made up of several promotions, not just one particular promotion. Most people, like myself, who heard NWA, we thought of the old Georgia Championship Wrestling area. But in fact, NWA made up of, and not to be confused with the rap group, by the way, NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, was made up of several organizations, including the Texas organization run by Fritz Von Erich, the World Class organization, Championship Wrestling from Florida, which was mainly ran by Eddie and Mike Graham, and part run by Dusty Rhodes. The Pacific Northwest, which was run by Rip Oliver, and several other territories all around the United States. There was that mindset everywhere. Yeah, they would let a black man maybe be basically a sideshow. They would let a black wrestler, if he was popular and good, they would let him be maybe a top regional champion, like maybe hold the main belt there, such as the case of Bill Watts when he let the Junkyard Dog hold the North American Heavyweight Championship, which was the top title in Mid-South, later to be known as the UWF. But as far as the 3 majors, the AWA, which never, to my knowledge, ever had a black world champion. I don't even think there was even a black man that ever held the tag team championships, if I'm not mistaken. The NWA, at least not up until the 2000s, had never had a black world heavyweight champion. That changed while under a partnership with TNA, now known as Impact Wrestling, R-Truth, who was a TNA contracted wrestler, or as he was known back then as Ron the Truth Killings, actually won the NWA World Championship, becoming, I believe, the first black World Heavyweight Champion ever under the NWA banner. WCW didn't do it until the early 90s, when Ron Simmons defeated Vader to become the World Heavyweight Champion. And there was some politics played there, mainly from what I heard by Dusty Rhodes, who actually wanted to try out a black man as the World Heavyweight Champion. And Simmons at the time was a very popular African American wrestler. Years later, there would not be another black world champion until Booker T in 2000 defeated Jeff Jarrett for the WCW world title. But even that one was drenched in major politics, as Sonny Ono, an Asian performer for WCW, and several other minority performers filed suit against WCW for racist practices. And in order to quell down the situation, the powers that be there at the time picked Booker T to become the new World Heavyweight Championship. A title that Booker T was well deserving of, but was never really considered, even at the behest of then head booker Vince Russo, who wanted Booker T to be the world champ. But the powers that be did not budge until this lawsuit came up. Kamala, who was also a very stereotypical but very well-known figure in the professional wrestling business, is mainly known for WWE and his legendary feuds with Andre the Giant, Jake the Snake Roberts, and The Undertaker, among others. But Kamala's roots actually began in the mid-southern territory, in the area where Jerry the King Lawler was mainly the booker. And there's several examples of racist practices, such as when the Junkyard Dog took on Hacksaw Butch Reed in the Mid-South area. There was at least 2 instances where Reed, playing the heel, attacked the Junkyard Dog from behind and in one instance, painted a yellow stripe down the back of the Junkyard Dog. And in another instance, actually poured a sticky substance over the Junkyard Dog after knocking him down from a sneak attack, and then pouring feathers over the Junkyard Dog. Granted, this was 2 African American wrestlers, but the practice at the time, knowing good and well that this practice was also done by the KKK to many black people, it was racist. Now, had it been by a white wrestler, it probably would have drew more of an outcry, but that's probably why they did it with 2 black wrestlers, to avoid the outcry. But there was a hint of racism there. Now, why am I throwing these few examples out from other places? It's because there seems to be this attitude that only the WWE has done racist practices, which, in fact, that is not the case. Professional wrestling as a whole has always had a tinge of racism in its practices. Now, is WWE the most visible culprit? Absolutely. They're the most visible, but they're not the only ones. World Class, I'm sure, has done racist practices. David Von Erich, the late David Von Erich's feud with Kamala had some tinge where all of a sudden Kamala, who had been this monster tearing through everyone, all of a sudden, at the sight of seeing David Von Erich hold up his hand in the claw position, and longtime fans will know what I'm talking about, he would run in fear. And it was almost a symbolism of, unintentional or not, it was almost a symbolism of white supremacy in a way. Just this little gesture made this black man cower in fear. And plus the Kamala gimmick in itself was portrayed as some kind of primitive, some kind of subhuman in a lot of ways. And again, like I said earlier, it didn't start in WWE. Yes, they continued it in WWE, but it actually started down in the South in Memphis under Jerry the King Lawler's watch. And of course, in World Class, and I believe Mid-South even had the character of Kamala. I know Kamala came to the NWA for a cup of coffee to have a match at the Great American Bash event in 1985 against Terry Allen, better known as Magnum TA. So these are just a few examples of racism. And here's another one in WCW. This never actually happened, but the Harlem Heat, the team of Stevie Ray and WWE Hall of Famer Booker T, at one point was going to be managed by a Southern white type played by Robert Fuller as Colonel Robert Parker, in which the Harlem Heat was going to be brought down in chains. Somebody was actually going to push this angle, but someone else in the back got wind of it and was like, no, we're not doing that. And basically had it shut down. But they were actually seriously considering doing that. And keep in mind, this was about mid to late 90s. This was in the mid to late 90s. So this wasn't all that long ago. And this was WCW, not WWE. There's always been a tinge of stereotyping in professional wrestling as a whole. WWE is not the only culprit of this. Now, am I trying to let WWE off the hook? No, not. Absolutely not. But at the same time, there's this mindset that only WWE has perpetrated, and it's done its share of racist acts. The most infamous was the time that John Cena, then WWE champion, was approached by Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon basically uttered the words right in front of Booker T, I might add, uttered the words, "What's up, my nigga?" on national television. So the incident with LeVar Ball, though I don't approve of what his son was saying, while I don't approve of it, is probably the least offensive of stuff that I've seen on WWE television and just any organization in wrestling history as a whole. And remember, this also happened in WCW when Booker T, during an interview out live in the crowd, when they were talking about the NWO, one of the hottest acts at the time, he uttered the infamous words, "Hulk Hogan, we coming for you, nigga," on national television. So WWE is not the only culprit. Is it the biggest culprit? Absolutely. Another example from the mid 80s, Greg the Hammer Valentine, during his feud with the Junkyard Dog, said in an interview, and I'm paraphrasing it, he said, "I want to get my hands on that black man. I'm going to beat down that black man, and I'm going to rub his face and rub the black off of him on the mat." Now, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that's pretty much what he said in so many words. It's so many words, that is what he said. Recent years, Booker T and Triple H Which that story as a whole, the way it ended at WrestleMania 19, still leaves a bad taste in my mouth even now. Where Triple H basically all but called Booker T the N-word, where Ric Flair would make many statements alluding to basically, you're nothing but a servant. You're nothing but a boy carrying my bag. I mean, that's pretty much what he was saying. And Triple H talking about, oh, like, man, I'm a nice guy. I like to be entertained. Why don't you dance for me, Booker? Basically, calling him pretty much a jigaboo. Just somebody that was beneath him, that the only value he had to him was to amuse him, like a court gesture. And there's probably other examples that I'm not thinking of at the moment, but those are the main ones that come to my head. Now, is black people the only group to be stereotyped in this way? Absolutely not. Russians, females even, Mexicans. Remember Remember the old Mexican group with Super Crazy and another guy? I think it was Juventud Guerrera. WWE had him come down to the ring on lawnmowers. Shoot, and don't even get me started on Asians. Some of the biggest stereotypes outside of black people have belonged to the Asians when it comes to wrestling. Wrestling as a whole, let alone WWE. So certainly blacks are not the only group. But overall, though, I just thought I'd make this short, and it's gone a little longer than I thought it would, but I thought I'd make this little video just to show WWE is not the only culprit. That whole business, that whole genre of entertainment has always had a guilty factor when it came to stereotypes, has always had a guilty factor when it came to racism. And that's really all I want to say on this edition of Grown Man Talk. I'm Irvin Griffin.
Nigga so cocky. Matter of fact, call me Frank Sinatra. Roll with some gangsters, mobsters, niggas that'll take that head that you got up off ya. Come on, cuz. Dream. It all started as a